What we're going to do is we're going to bring up our next reader. And that we, that's mostly me making that decision. Alrighty, here we go. We have, our next reader is Grant Gordon. He is a professional dog walker. Between picking up feces, he's a stand-up comedian, actor, musician, and writer. He's a regular at comedy clubs and bar shows throughout New York City, and an irregular pretty much everywhere else. He co-hosts Sack Magic, a free comedy show, Mondays at 9 p.m. at Legion Bar, which is right here. I don't know how many of you guys are here solely because of Grant. I assume all of you. But he hosts that show over there, and it's really, really good. They get, the best acts in the country, like literally, like the stand-up comedians that you see on late nights go try out material there all the time, and it's a great show. So 9 p.m. Mondays, right around the corner here. I saw him put a little promo thing over there, which he wasn't supposed to do, but, we're pretty lax with the rules around here, it turns out. So. I was in the middle of reading something. Practicing Buddhist and devout Pisces, Grant would like to thank the planet Mercury for not being in retrograde during his performance. He'd be okay with it if it was. We're just glad it isn't, for once. This is Grant Gordon, ladies and gentlemen.
Planets, yeah.
Thank you, guys. Keep going for Ben, huh? Doing an awesome job. Thanks for promoting that so wholeheartedly, too. I mean, unbelievable. I'm not paying him. He just did that. It's hard.
He's paying us.
I am.
Oh, boy. Oh, the boom stand. Classic. Very complicated piece of machinery.
Okay, guys. Well, tonight I'm not doing stand-up comedy, so you're welcome. I'm just going to read a short story I wrote. This is called The Ambassador. I'll wait for this motorcycle to take off. Perfect intro. That's incredible. A motorcycle takes off into the distance. This is crazy. All right. Here we go, for reals. Jared Carmichael wiggles in his seat. He's in hour 15 of the 220-hour pan-galactic spaceflight crossing Cygnus A into Omega Centauri, and his ass hurts. It isn't so much his seat's fault, it's perfectly adequate. As long as Jared can remember, he's had a sensitive ass, always needing to get up and let it breathe after sitting for long periods. He's also sweating. Again, not really the space cruiser's fault. It's furnished with all the comforts one's come to expect on a modern commercial spacecraft. The temperature is kept at a crisp 68 degrees Fahrenheit with personal climate zones in every seat. It's just that he's anxious. Very anxious. He's anxious for a few reasons. For one, he hates long trips. The longer he's away from his home, the less he feels like himself. The less he feels like himself, the less overall confidence he has. Being an Earth ambassador to grade C alien cultures, his job is pretty much nothing but traveling, usually to the farthest ends of commercial space travel and beyond, leaving his confidence hovering somewhere between non-existent and just visiting. The other reason he's anxious is this. He's an hour away from the hollow conference call of his life. A call that could very well be the difference of him reaching the echelon of an ambassador to grade B- alien cultures, staying right where he is, or worse, being demoted to grade D through Z cultures. Any culture past F is pretty much worthless, and mostly dangerous. The equivalent of landing on a planet of prison roommates named Bubba. His ass winces at the thought. Why did Jared choose this job? A question he often avoids asking himself through overindulgence in sweets. Jared's a go-with-the-flow kind of guy, and his quadruple doctorate in alien anthropology left him with few other options, being such a low-level degree, and a lot of debt. He often reflects jealously upon his parents' generation, where a triple, even double doctorate was enough to find suitable work. But no use dwelling in the past. Stay in the moment, he tells himself, as he unwraps his third cosmic mega brownie. Despite its toll on Jared's finicky ass, an ambassador to grade C alien cultures is a pretty cushy job. Grade C cultures are usually friendly, peaceable cultures with similar technological know-how, but not much else interesting to offer. A typical grade C cultural exchange trip goes as follows. Our species discovers theirs, or vice versa. We send someone out, we shake their hands, they thumb our foreheads, or whatever they do. We put on their silly hats, we sing their silly songs. They eat a Doritos Locos taco. We go home, present our findings, and clock out. It's all formality, really. It seems the longer a society exists, the more formalities it accumulates, like dead skin that refuses to scrub off. And by 2250, society on Earth is ashy as all hell. The call Jared is anticipating will literally place him at a live conference. His hollow avatar will be projected into an auditorium full of his peers and superiors of every race, color, and creed, some attending physically, others holographically from around the globe, and he is to give a standard presentation of his alien cultural experience. Usually this is a much less grand affair, but this happens to be Jared's 50th mission, which puts him up for his performance review at the annual Cultural Ambassadors Conference. It's a very fair system. All he has to do is stay the course, stick the routine, and up the ladder he goes. But much to Jared's eternal chagrin, this presentation will be anything but routine. The mission started routine enough. A standard level C meet and greet request from a race called the Slandarians. We already knew they were there, way out in the Circeus galaxy, but we'd been playing galactic phone tag for a few hundred years. Finally, everyone caught up, and one day the request form shot out of the holofax perfectly filled out, in English no less. Clearly they'd done their homework. Judging by the Slandarians' adherence to protocol, Jared was looking forward to cruising into his 50th mission and a secure future without incident. Fortune was smiling. Unbeknownst to him, she was also twiddling her fingers maniacally. Jared arrived on Slandaria a week ago. They greeted him with open arms and pointed fingers, a Slandarian welcoming gesture. They were perfectly polite, kind, and hospitable. Everything was routine, except this. Their language was simply the most offensive concoction of syllables Jared had ever laid ears upon. Due to the general reality dampening one experiences when being immersed in an entirely new culture, it took him a while to even notice it. But once he did, he couldn't believe it. It wasn't just offensive in general. It was specifically offensive just to Earthlings. To any other species, it wouldn't have raised an eyebrow, but to humans, it was so offensive, it seemed preposterous. It seemed impossible. A note in the word impossible. By 2250, it has an entirely different connotation than it did in Jared's great-great-grandparents' generation. Ever since Earth broke the space-time barrier and became a destination on the galactic map, when the uncountable multitudes of civilizations of mind-shredding variety were constantly being discovered voluntarily and the word just stopped meaning the same thing. Over time, the word improbable came to mean most likely, and impossible was simply a strong maybe. As ridiculous as it may have seemed to his ancestors, Jared was quick to accept this impossibility as a reality. Jared's willingness to adapt was one of his only strong qualities as a person. Some would consider flexibility a rather weak strength, especially when compared to actual strength. But in Jared's line of work, it was a boon. There was no use wasting any time hovering in disbelief. The question was how to deal with it, and it was this very question that was causing Jared so much anxiety at present. Would you like something to drink? The space hostess startles him back to reality. Oh, no thanks, he replies. You sure I can't get you something? She insists. Jared looks around. All the other passengers he can see are either sleeping or wearing their hollow helmets and doing God knows what. She must be bored, he thinks. He also thinks she's actually quite beautiful. Bright eyes, curly hair, a perfect look of congeniality with a touch of mischief. So where are you actually, up in the cockpit? He says with nervous joviality. He's referring to her physical person, which he concludes can't be what he's looking at. Surely this is her hollow avatar. She smiles. I'm right here. No way, that must be your avatar, he says with genuine conviction. He is certain this is her avatar. In fact, it'd probably been illegally brushed up in Hollow Shop. Oh, stop, she blushes. There's a long pause, during which Jared realizes his nerdy innocence is being mistaken for charisma. And he is actually making headway with this attractive woman, which instantly paralyzes him. She generously allows this moment to subside without showing any visible disappointment. My name is Alex, if you need anything. She smiles, somewhat self-consciously, and glides away. I'm Jared! The words explode out of his mouth as if he's been underwater for the past 2 minutes and just breached the surface. Too little, too late, she was gone. He did, however, succeed in scaring the shit out of the person sleeping next to him. He apologizes to his startled neighbor and plunges into deep thought. T-minus 30 minutes to presentation time. Jared's little overture with Alex distracted him enough to start preparing in earnest. He dons his hollow helmet and fires it up. After navigating a few floating menus, he is transmuted to his dressing room backstage at the conference. The room is tackily old-timey, with an actual mirror with those giant light bulbs on it. Jared can hear faint murmurings of the audience being seated in the distance. He checks his avatar out. It looks good. People in 2250 generally look their best. With the advent of avatars, it's hard not to. Most people these days choose to exist as hollow projections that are three-dimensionally massed around generic drone robots, which are then controlled remotely by the user via their hollow helmet. To both the user and the person interacting with the holograph, it's just as good as reality. If not better, because you can always look great, even if in reality you're naked in your apartment covered in barbecue sauce. Of course, regulations had to be put in place. There was a short period upon their inception when the entire race of humanity looked like a casting call for an underwear ad. This was quickly remedied with a shotgun legislation by the FHCC. The ruling was this: your avatar had to be you, but you could freeze one version of yourself to be your avatar as long as it was within the past 10 years. So, every decade or so, you found your friends and loved ones scrambling to get in shape, aggressively shaving and primping for their holograph renewal. It was quite a shock the first time Jared saw someone age a decade literally overnight. It made going to your vainer friends' birthday parties more fun, he had to admit, but it never sat well with him. Jared decided to become holorganic, one who chooses to live outside his or her avatar and only put it on when physical limitations demand it. This put him on the same rung of the social ladder of an ancient cult he'd studied in college who called themselves vegans. After a few minutes of busy work with his avatar, the gravity of the situation starts to creep back into Jared's consciousness. He has no idea how to handle it. If he was a more skilled presenter, he may have been able to spin it into a joke, but he isn't, and he knows from experience that if an attempt to relieve tension is unsuccessful, it generally doubles the overall tension in the room. His knowledge of this makes him even more nervous, which further guarantees that any attempt at frivolity would be disastrous. No. His only option is to stick to protocol and just pretend nothing is amiss. He'd wrap himself up in a blanket of formality and hope it had the same power to ward off offensiveness as his favorite childhood blanket did monsters. Jared accesses his ambassador helmet in the hollow helmet. He wants to review the protocol for the presentation. He already knows it back and forth, but he just wants to be extra certain given the circumstances. After a few mental commands, the appropriate section of the handbook appears before his eyes. It reads, "A Class C ambassador presentation is to be formed as follows. Presenter approaches podium. He or she bows, waves, and gives 2 peace signs followed by 2 thumbs up. He or she says, 'Distinguished citizens of Earth, I give you the insert culture here.' The house lights dim, and a holographic recording of the species ambassador is to begin giving a speech in the culture's native language. The presenter then translates the speech sentence by sentence in a call and response fashion. This is as far as he gets before the stagehand enters the room. 2 minutes, Mr. Carmichael. Follow me, please." Jared is escorted to the wings of the stage. He peeks out from behind the curtain. The room is packed. There isn't a seat that doesn't have the butt of some high-level ambassador filling it, each one an expert on the various manners and formalities of their own and others' culture. Thanks to the hollow technology, the room is a cross-section of every ethnic derivation that exists on Earth, a tough room by anyone's standards. Jared takes a deep breath. For a moment, Alex, the space hostess, pops into his head. He recovers focus and walks onto the stage. Jared approaches the podium. He bows, waves, and gives 2 peace signs followed by 2 subsequent thumbs up. He clears his throat and says, "Distinguished citizens of Earth, I give you the Slendarians." The house lights dim, and a holographic recording begins to play in center stage. The first image to appear is some Slendarian text. The computer, which Jared has updated with the alien language, automatically translates it. It's the name of the Slendarian Holographic Corporation, which cleverly combines a Slendarian symbol for holograph with a symbol for affordable, which the computer translates as Holocaust. A few gasps disguised as coughs can be heard in the back of the room. It continues. The ambassador of Slendaria now fades into existence at center stage. The Slendarians are generally humanoid in appearance, with most of their sensory perceptors where an Earthling would expect them to be. They have 3 large fingers on each hand, the middle of which the ambassador is now displaying gratuitously to everyone in the room. This, naturally, is the aforementioned Slendarian gesture of greeting. The ambassador lowers his hands and begins to speak. "Dago nigger." "Good evening," Jared translates, avoiding eye contact with anyone. More gasps echo throughout the room. The ambassador continues. "Spick wop, Mick Hitler. It's a pleasure to be here." A suppressed yelp can be heard from the back of the auditorium. Jared struggles to maintain focus as sweat pours down both his real and hollow face. "Jigaboo gook, he Madoff. All of you are now friends of ours." A woman in the front row faints. Jared can't go on. He too feels consciousness slipping away. The stunned audience sees Jared's holograph suddenly fade out, and the generic drone underneath collapses onto the podium with a thunderous crash. "Alex!" Jared screams. He wrenches off his hollow helmet and starts mangling the call button on the space cruiser's console. "Hi." Alex looks at Jared. Her expression goes from polite attentiveness to genuine concern. "Are you okay?" "I'm fine." Clearly he isn't. He looks like he just saw an audience of dignitaries get verbally raped at his hands. "Actually, I'm not," he confesses. "I could really use that drink." "Great, I was just about to take a break. I'll join you." She smiles. Jared looks into her inviting eyes, and a moment later can't stop himself from grinning in return. The actual Slendarian ambassador is not grinning. He is in a control room on Slendaria, surrounded by monitors, the largest of which is displaying the live feed of the cultural conference on Earth. A smallish fire has broken out where the Jared's drone crashed into the podium. The holograph is now singing the Slendarian anthem, Nigger Cumcock, which translates to Nights Become Day. As the audience scrambles from the flames with ears covered, his brief study of human body language is sufficient for him to see that they are not enjoying the presentation. In fact, they seem to be hating it. This deeply offends him, especially after he so politely ingested Earth's ceremonial Doritos Locos taco, for which he was still suffering the consequences. He decides then and there that Earth is now an enemy of Slandaria, and he will devote the rest of his days to rectifying this grave offense. But first, he must use the bathroom. Again. Thank you.
Yeah.